So guys, I want to do another black fatigue video, and I want to talk about something that happened to me a few weeks ago when I was taking the Southwest Airlines, that I was sexually harassed by a stewardess. And what she did was that she would be leaning over and talking to the person next to me, and then she'd just be putting her hand on my shoulder for a long time. And then later on the flight, she would do the exact same thing. I could have easily said, "Hey, don't put your hands on me," but I thought about doing a report, but I decided not to do that for one reason, that I felt like sometimes people don't understand that putting your hands on somebody is never appropriate or for a long duration, people that you don't know really. And I also understand too that, sometimes I've gone to restaurants and people pat people on the back or pat their customers on the back really. So sometimes I just think that, we have to just, think about whether or not we want to just do that, because once we file sexual harassment against somebody, it changes their life really. And I think that sometimes we have to think about it. I've been sexually harassed many times by many different people. I worked at a job where some guy was showing up to work drunk, exposed himself, peed by dumpsters in front of me. I had a double sexual harassment at the hospital where a person was rubbing my chest. I also dealt with sexual harassment at a hospital where someone was putting their hand on their shoulder for an extended period of time really. But I just thought to myself that I think it would just do more, it was probably more vindictive than anything else really. But I do want to talk a little bit about this, that number one, I do want to say that it goes down to this double standard between men and women, because, if I was working at the hospital and I was talking to a patient on the other side of the room, like by where the window was, and I was putting my hand on the shoulder of a patient on one side of the room, and I did that for a long duration really, and they were a woman, that would easily be sexual harassment, and then automatically that would be out the door, because you can't treat employees like that, you can't treat patients like that. So it goes down to that double standard. A woman can put their hands on a man, but a man can't put their hands on a woman. But I also have to be really honest with you that I've only been sexually harassed by black people in my life, really, black men and black women. So I really think that it's a little weird that happens a lot in black culture, like putting hands on people or sexual harassing. Or I remember I had a couple of people at my hospital job who would be putting their hands all over my arm and stuff like that. I kind of wonder why that happens a lot in the black community, like this issue of sexual harassment really. And I think that part of it stems from stereotypes becoming impressionable behaviors. Like you look at the hip hop culture and it's very sexualized, or sometimes one of the old stereotypes of black people is that they're very sex crazed, or they can't control themselves sexually and stuff like that. So I think that probably stems from that, but I also think it kind of stems from another issue of, more of an American issue, as I said before, that I think that, it comes down to gender standards where, like I said before, and I'll say it again, if a man puts their hands on a woman, or a man pats a woman on the back, or a man puts their hand on a woman's shoulder, and they're not cool with it, they're losing their job. But if a woman does that to a man, it's not treated as a big deal really, because it's just it's just something that happens really. And I've also talked about the racial side. Obviously I'm mixed race, I'm part African American, so obviously if I was white and so I didn't like that, and everything like that, and people saw it and I made a big deal about it, it will go down one way. But but because of my skin color, it goes a different way really. Because sometimes when black men are sexually harassed, or when women put their hands on them and other things like that, people just don't treat it as a big deal, because they may say, oh, he likes it because of the stereotype that black people are sex crazed, or they have a lot of sexual energy and other things like that. But in general, we need to keep our hands to ourselves, because number one, it made me angry. Number two, it made me uncomfortable. Number two, I wanted to get up and yell and be get your hands off of me, because I'm kind of almost at my last nerve with people putting their hands on me, because you don't put your hands on people that you don't know really. And it kind of reminds me of my coworker, Javon. He was trying to get close to me, trying to give me a kiss. He was putting his hand on my chest, on my shoulders, and other things like that. And we did talk and told him to stop doing that, because or else I'm going to report it. And then we both had a conversation. We both said, hey, you know what, when we were kids, we both were sexually harassed by a relative. So maybe he's trying to relive his trauma. But I remember, like, you know, when I was a kid, you know, I had lived through a bunch of inappropriate things and not okay things. And I've had an issue with saying inappropriate things and being a little offensive, really, because I've gone through a lot of things. But in general, we always just have to be, you know, very just mindful of people's boundaries. You know, it doesn't matter what we go through, we got to treat people right, really. And then also, too, we got to understand when we're in customer service and other things like that, that, you know, sometimes we're having a really good day, our emotions are on a cloud nine, and we want to give everybody a hug because we feel euphoric. There are times in our life where we feel euphoric, but there are times when we have to control ourselves. You know, like, I have this friend that I'm in love with, we're friends, and I can't say something like, you know what, I love you, I want to marry you, or I want to hold you in my arms, or things like that. You know, I may feel that way towards my friend because I love her and I care for her and I would die for her. But there are just things that we don't say and do because it makes other people feel uncomfortable. And that's also true with people we don't know. There are some days where, you know, where I feel very head over heels and I want to give somebody a hug, or, you know what, or like I said, I'm very lonely. So there's some days where I just want to give, you know, somebody a hug or connect with somebody, and I don't do that because I have these, I've understood boundaries. I understand boundaries. Sometimes we can imagine the things that we want to do to people, but we got to be respectful and everything like that. You know, we're not dogs, because, you know, dogs will definitely, you know, jump on you or pounce on you, or sometimes little children will be a little understanding, really. But in general, you know, keep your hands to yourself, really. No matter what you're feeling, really. You know, it's all about respect.